Sarah Andrews wiped the sweat from her forehead as she balanced 3 plates of scrambled eggs along her arm. The morning sun streamed through the grimy windows of Joe's diner, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. For 6 years, she'd worn the same faded blue uniform, served the same lukewarm coffee, and painted on the same tired smile. At 25, Sarah had already lived several lifetimes of hurt. Her mama had died when Sarah was 15, leaving her in the care of her loving grandma, who worked miracles with the little they had. But the empty chair at their dinner table told a different story, one of a father who had walked away when Sarah was just 8 years old, leaving nothing but memories that grew fainter with each passing year. The diner was her lifeline now, even though some customers looked right through her like she was made of glass. Being a young black woman in a small town meant carrying extra weight on her shoulders, but her grandma's words echoed in her mind. "Keep your chin up, baby girl. Your worth isn't measured by their judgment." The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. A man in an expensive suit walked in, his shoes clicking against the floor like he owned the place. Something about him made her stomach twist. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or how his eyes seemed to look down on everything they touched. "Coffee. Black," he barked when Sarah approached his table. She noticed his golden watch catching the morning light, probably worth more than she made in a year. As she poured his coffee, his lip curled. "Must be nice," he muttered, "having such simple responsibilities." Sarah's hand trembled, coffee nearly spilling over the cup's rim. For years, she'd swallowed comments like these, let them burn in her throat like bitter medicine. But something in her snapped. "Sir," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I work hard every day of my life. I deserve respect, just like anyone else." The man looked up, irritation flashing across his face. But as their eyes met, something changed. His expression shifted from anger to shock, then to something else, recognition. The coffee pot nearly slipped from Sarah's grasp. She knew those eyes. She'd seen them in her dreams, in old photographs hidden in her grandma's drawer. The same deep brown, the same tiny scar above the left eyebrow from when he'd fallen off his bike while teaching her to ride. "Daddy." The word escaped her lips before she could stop it. Thomas Walker, now known to the world as the billionaire CEO of Walker Industries, sat frozen, staring at the daughter he'd abandoned 17 years ago. The daughter he'd left behind when he decided his ambitions were more important than his family. "Sarah," he whispered, her name falling from his lips like a forgotten prayer. The diner seemed to fade away, leaving just them and the weight of 17 years of absence between them. Sarah's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straight, years of questions and pain rushing to the surface. "You left us," she said, each word carrying the weight of countless tearful nights. "Mama got sick, and you weren't there. Grandma had to work 3 jobs. I thought I wasn't good enough for you to stay." Thomas's perfectly manufactured facade cracked. "Sarah, he started, but she cut him off. "No," she said, tears burning her eyes. "You don't get to explain now. Not after all these years. Not after Mama died, waiting for you to come back." The other customers pretended not to watch, but Sarah could feel their eyes. She didn't care anymore. Let them see. Let them witness how the mighty Thomas Walker had abandoned his own flesh and blood. "I did it to protect you," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "The business world I was entering, it was dangerous. There were people who would have hurt you to get to me. I thought you'd be better off without me." Sarah laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "Better off? We barely survived. Mama worked until she couldn't anymore. I watched her fade away, asking for you in her final days. Where was your protection then?" Thomas reached for her hand, but Sarah pulled away. "Please," he said, "let me make it right. I have money now. I can give you everything you never had." "Money?" Sarah's voice cracked. "I didn't need your money, Daddy. I needed you. I needed you at my school plays, at my graduation, at Mama's funeral. I needed you to tell me why my own father didn't love me enough to stay." The diner had fallen completely silent. Even the sizzling of the grill seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. "I never stopped loving you," Thomas whispered, tears rolling down his cheeks. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone, I thought about you. I kept tabs on you from afar. I told myself it was for your own good, but I was a coward. I was afraid to face what I'd done. Sarah stood there, trembling, years of built-up emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She thought about the little girl who used to sit by the window every night, watching for her daddy's car. The teenager who couldn't bring herself to look at family photos. The young woman who'd built walls around her heart to keep from being hurt again. You can't fix this with money, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Some things break in ways that can't be mended with dollar bills and empty apologies. Thomas nodded, his shoulders slumping. For the first time, Sarah saw him not as the powerful businessman he'd become, but as what he truly was, a broken man who'd sacrificed his family on the altar of ambition. I know, he said softly. But Sarah, if you'll let me, I'd like to try. Not with money, but with time. With patience. With whatever you're willing to give me. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, seeing both the father she'd lost and the stranger he'd become. Her heart ached with a pain so deep it felt physical, but somewhere beneath that pain was something else, a tiny flicker of hope she thought had died long ago. I can't promise anything, she said finally, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. But maybe we can start with coffee. Real coffee, not this diner stuff. And talking. Just talking. Thomas's eyes lit up with a hope he didn't deserve, but desperately clung to. I'd like that, he said softly. More than you know. As Sarah walked away from his table, her legs still shaking, she felt something shift inside her. The weight of his absence would always be there, a scar that time could fade but never erase. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for something new to grow in the spaces between their broken pieces. She thought about her mama, about the forgiveness she'd always preached, even in her final days. Hate's too heavy a burden to carry, baby, she used to say. Sometimes you gotta let it go. Not for them, but for yourself. Sarah looked back at Thomas, who sat there looking lost in his expensive suit, and realized that while she couldn't forget the past, maybe she could find a way to build a future, not the one she dreamed of as a little girl, but something new, something real, something that acknowledged both the pain and the possibility of healing. It wouldn't be easy. Some wounds run too deep for simple solutions. But as she tied her apron a little tighter and wiped away the last of her tears, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years, the courage to hope again, even if that hope came with the risk of being hurt once more. After all, sometimes the bravest thing isn't holding on to anger, but being willing to let it go one small piece at a time, even when forgiveness feels impossible. And maybe that's where healing truly begins, not in forgetting the past, but in finding the strength to face it and perhaps, in time, to forge something new from its ashes.